You clicked on this. Why? Just kidding, you'll be fine. Thank you very much for clicking. What have you been up to anyway? How have we felt about this last year? How are we feeling about this year? Big question, I know, but in this winding, ever-changing landscape of life, as well as reflecting on the present, celebrating/forgetting the past, it's also good to look forward to the potential joys of the future, despite some of the other stuff. And for me, fair few of those joys are all them films that are coming out. I mentioned in my previous video that I was working on a video at the tail end of 2023 talking about the films of 2024, and it was going to lead into a discussion about the strikes and how that impacted the industry. Here, I just want to do something a lot simpler, just talk about the films that are coming out this year that I'm most anticipating. And I wanted to do this because this is the most unbridled, pure excitement and joy I've felt towards one of these lists since 2017. A couple of them don't have ironclad release dates yet, but based on production details, it'd make sense for them to come out in 2025. If they don't, well, if I make a 2026 equivalent of this video, we can talk about them again. I'm excited to get into it now. We're going to do the top 10 from 10 to 1 in order of excitement, but first I'm just going to run through some honourable mentions, no particular order. Wolfman by Leigh Whannell, I'm sure that'll be a good one. The trailer's very intense. It really dives into less so the gore and just more the unrestrained terror, the human perspective that this family is facing, that this guy is facing in this dreadful situation. This might be another low-key attempt from Universal to set up their Monsters universe. No, not that one. But whatever it is, with Whannell at the wheel, I'm sure it'll be a spooky treat. Clara and the Sun, based on a novel by Kazuo Ishiguro, which I haven't read, but it's being directed by Taika Waititi. Now, what was your immediate reaction when I said that name? If it was a sigh or an eye roll, I can understand in the sense that since he exploded in popularity, he was just kind of everywhere for a while, which can be overbearing and annoying. It happened basically when Love and Thunder came out, which was an unusual low point in his filmography. But before that, look at this! That's a streak right there! I feel like this could be a return to form for him. That would be nice to see. I used to be a mega fan of the MCU, and I haven't done a complete 180 turn on it, but I'm very oversaturated by everything. But something I did always want to see was a Sam Wilson-led Captain America film, and we're getting that now with Brave New World. A film that has had some difficulty getting to the screen. Not to the same extent as Blade, the movie they cannot make, but the behind the scenes of this production have been rough. But they made it, it's coming out, and I hope it's a good one. I'm casually on board for this. I do not know the first thing about Wildwood, and I intend to keep it that way. All I can tell you is it's Laika's next film, and they're reliably good. It's based on a novel by Colin Meloy, and it's apparently a sort of dark fantasy adventure with a stacked cast. I'm excited by the prospect of this getting rave reviews and being able to go into it knowing as much about it as I do now, just being completely surprised. I've never been much of a fanboy of the Predator films. I've seen all of them and thought they were pretty good, fine crap, until Prey, that is, which rocked. I loved the concept and the execution of that one. Predator Badlands is something of a spiritual sequel to Prey, though higher budgeted than expected. I hope that doesn't bite them in the butt financially, where this film disappoints and so they just stop making them, because I really love the direction that they're taking this series, having these anthology historical pieces. In any case, loved Prey. Really looking forward to this. Another action movie now. This one's called Love Hurts. There hasn't been a star-making comeback story that I have been so all-in attached to and felt has been more deserving than that of Ke Huy Quan. The man's lifelong struggle in the industry after his 2 childhood hits, being paid off with one of the decade's best films and an Oscar just for him. Pure bliss. And now for the first time, he is headlining an action movie, and if Everything Everywhere All at Once didn't have you convinced of his capabilities to do exactly that, watch it again. I did recently with some friends. It's still great, and he's still great. Great cast, great potential, and I'm just really glad that Kwan's getting this. This last one's a big old mixed bag. One that I'm mentioning more out of curiosity than excitement. I'm sour on the idea of a live-action How to Train Your Dragon. The original being one of my all-time favourite films, top 5. I'm especially sour if they're doing what the trailer implies, which is a shot-for-shot, one-to-one remake. I mean, if that is what they're doing, then congratulations, you made a good movie. But once I see it, I'm never going to see it again. I'm only ever going to watch the original. Dean DeBlois is returning to direct, which does have me more optimistic for this than Disney's recent remake rollout. Like, the reason for it existing is shallow and grim, but it feels like there may be a level of care put into this that the Disney ones have lacked. Fingers crossed, but like barely. Lazily even. Right, that's them out of the way. On to the top 10.
Number 10.
Here's a film that I'm in on mostly for the director, though there are other things at play here that do have me pretty excited. After knocking it out of the park left, right and centre with a true story biopic, a legacy sequel, and 2 smash hit comic book movies, Ryan Coogler brings us his first true original feature. You know, saying it like that does sound like a bit of a slight, but it really isn't meant that way. Have you seen his films? They're all great. Sinners is a departure for him though, because it is a full-on horror film, described apparently as a vampire period piece. That in itself, awesome. Scenarios like that where the worst thing in the world is after you, but the most advanced piece of technology you have is like a musket, maybe even a pitchfork. Things like that, always a thrill. Also, Michael B. Jordan's leading this thing in dual roles, which is always a very exciting thing to hear about a project. It doesn't happen very often, but I'm really keen to see how he separates these two into distinctive individuals. He's one of the best actors working right now, so I'm very excited to see these performances. Also, Hailee Steinfeld, Omar Miller, Delroy Lindo, seeing them take on a vampire, on paper, epic. Not much else to say about this one, to be honest. I'm not going to watch any more trailers, just gonna go in blind as I can, and hopefully get a great experience out of it.
Number 9.
One thing that I feel people have been starting to notice over the last few years is the general absence from cinemas of the rom-com. Anyone But You did quite well at the box office last Christmas, but that feels more like a general absence of notable competition. But knowing that we're getting one starring Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, and Pedro Pascal, that rocks. And that it's being directed by Celine Song of Past Lives, be still. There isn't much information about Materialists at the moment outside of a very brief synopsis, and similarly to Sinners, I hope to keep it as close to that going in. Obviously the 3 leads are a draw, they're all helplessly charismatic, and it's A24 who have put out some of the best films of the last decade. But more importantly, and specifically for me, Past Lives was one of the most affecting experiences I've ever had in the cinema. Beautiful, powerful, heartbreaking, you must see it. If Song can follow up with another banger, I'm going to be keeping my eyes firmly on her going forward. This is a hell of a thing to say, I know, but she strikes me as a Barry Jenkins type filmmaker. Someone who quietly comes out with an all-timer and just draws everyone's attention on everything she does going forward. If this is a great follow-up, that possibility basically becomes a guarantee. Don't know if it's going to lean more into the rom or the com, or sneak a bit of that Past Lives heartbreak in there, but I'm really excited to see this play out.
Number 8.
This film has taken me for a ride. As a once huge MCU fan, the only projects post-Endgame that I've been truly up and down excited for were Hawkeye, Thor Love and Thunder, Guardians 3, and now, The Fantastic Four. Sorry, The Fantastic Four First Steps. Forgot Marvel are in their weird fucked up title era. I was never really a big superhero fan as a kid. Like, I loved the Teen Titans cartoon. I'd occasionally watch Batman or Spider-Man if they were on. But for whatever reason, I loved the Fantastic Four. They would show reruns of the 90s cartoon in the run-up to the 2005 movie, and for whatever reason, I just really latched onto them. Ben Grimm is my favourite Marvel character, and to see him and the others enter the MCU is really exciting, even if they're joining at a little bit of a low point. Not gonna lie, I was dreading this for a time. I was scared that this was gonna be a Quantumania-style clusterfuck, and I'm sure at one point that is what it was gonna be. But I think Marvel's 2023 being weak as piss, forcing them to readjust their output, may well have saved this film. Though time will tell. I really feel they're trying to make this one work, rather than just rest on their laurels like they had been up to this point. But the casting rules. The 60s setting and standalone narrative is basically what everyone's been asking for this film, and the vibe they've been teasing, the tone and atmosphere, just seems so on point for the Fantastic Four. I have reservations about the future of these characters, based on previous MCU entries, and also, we're not going to get a sequel until after Secret Wars, and what the hell is the universe going to look like when that happens? But I'm really hoping with all my heart that they can just have one good film.
Number 7.
So, funny thing, I had to re-record this video. For a number of reasons, both technical and perfectionist, relating to this silly voice of mine. But also, when I recorded draft 1 of this video, I had not seen the Mission Impossible films. I've now seen all of the Mission Impossible films. If I'd seen them in 2018, Fallout would have made the list. If I'd seen them in 2023, Dead Reckoning, formerly Dead Reckoning Part 1 would have made the list. But I've seen them by 2025, and so the Final Reckoning makes this list. These films, man, I don't know how they do it. They seem to be beloved successes, but very casually. Like, they'll take a 5 or 6 year break, and then blast into cinemas with some of the craziest dopamine hits put to screen, and also make a sizable chunk at the box office. Most of the time, I've never seen a more dedicated effort of one man's mission to kill himself on screen. That's the true Mission Impossible right there. Supposedly, this is the final one, but Cruise and presumably Paramount wants to keep it going, so I guess we'll see what happens with the future of this. But either way, this is gonna be spectacular, and hopefully a fitting conclusion to this portion of the series. Pour one out for Jeremy Renner never coming back though. I would like to have seen him return. He and Ving Rhames had a great rapport in the 5th movie. Oh, there's an idea for you, Paramount. Mission Impossible presents Luther and Brandt. I'll see it.
Number 6.
I'm a cheat now. I don't normally do this, but I'm chucking in a tie for 6th place. I am equally excited for these films, can't separate them, and there is a thematic reason why, which I'll get into. Firstly, we're back to another favourite director of mine, this time with Chloe Zhao. She at one point was announced to be developing a sci-fi western adaptation of Dracula, which... fuck me, that right there is the cure to world conflict. Word on that has silenced, but hopefully she circles back around to that. But her next project is almost as exciting. Hamnet. It's based on a 2020 novel by Maggie O'Farrell, which I haven't read, but I believe is a fictional account of a true story, which is the Shakespeare family trying to move on from their grief after the passing of their son Hamnet. I'm a huge lover of Shakespeare's works. Anything relating to him is gonna draw me in, whether it's a work based on his true life or an adaptation of one of his plays. And Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley, that's a catch right there. They're both so good. And given the subject matter and with Zhao at the helm, I trust this will be a compelling, tragic watch that may be the thing that gets her back into awards contention. And the other one sharing 6th place, keeping with the theme of Shakespeare, is Lear Rex. It's an adaptation of King Lear, obviously. King Lear is my favourite of Shakespeare's plays, and it's wild we haven't had a theatrical adaptation this century. There was the TV film with Anthony Hopkins, of course, but for the big screen, nothing. This one has a hell of a cast, which is really promising. Wouldn't have pegged Al Pacino for Lear, though. I'm not going to declare him a bad choice by any means. I think we could say that Academy Award winner, 9-time Academy Award nominee Al Pacino has earned his stripes. That feels fair to say. But the story of Lear is... well, it's hard to not make gloomy, let's say, but it's really compelling. It's a story that I've always envisioned that with modern filmmaking sensibilities, a great cast and a strong director could make for a hell of a film, one that you couldn't take your eyes off of. And this version, tick tick tick, has all 3 of them. We've had no end to the Macbeths and the Hamlets and the Romeos and the Juliets. Lear is owed his due. This could be a true epic. I think this could be pretty spectacular.
Number 5.
Among my many different loves of different mediums, one that has just been constantly rejected as of late, deservedly or not, is the movie musical. And as far as stage shows go, my favourite of the lot, by far, is Wicked. Just blew my tiny 11-year-old mind as a kid, seeing it on stage for the first time. And now, after years of waiting, we now have a film adaptation. And it was amazing. Like many people, I was very apprehensive about them splitting the show into 2 films. I figured they were going to add stuff into it, but I didn't know how much it was going to be in service of the story. But having seen part 1, really they didn't add a whole lot. They just made what was in Act 1 of the show longer. And now with part 2 coming out later this year, it has got me very curious and excited on how they're going to stick the landing, how they're going to adapt the second act of the play, maybe introduce some elements from the book, and how they're going to bring the whole thing together. The show is 165 minutes. The part 1 film was almost that length on its own. What the hell is this going to look like? I don't know, but I want to see it. Wicked really did feel like a true event. I was on tenterhooks on what the reception was going to be like, if it would work well in a film format and how audiences would take to it. And seeing how part 2 wraps everything up can't come soon enough. Here's hoping it's closer to Dune than It in terms of success for part 2s. If it's as good as the first, I'm going to be asking for very little going forward. Having an epic 2-part Wicked film, I'm going to be a happy lad.
Number 4.
Jumping back into the theme of directors I like, which you may have noticed is most of this list. Spoiler alert, it's going to continue to be the rest of this list. But we have the long-awaited return of Bong Joon-ho. Taking a fairly deserved break after cleaning up at the Oscars a few years ago, he's now back with Mickey 17, which is a sci-fi comedy adaptation of the book Mickey 7 by Ashton Edward. It follows a guy played by Robert Pattinson, or as I like to call him, Robert Battenbat.
What are we going to go with? Are we going to go with Robert Pattinson?
Yes.
Or are we going to go with Patman?
What about Robert Batten's
Bat.
bat?
Robert Batten's bat. Okay, good.
Who, for his job, dies again and again and comes back to perform dangerous duties with new knowledge that can further humanity. There was a report in early 2024 that this film was having a pretty troubled production, and that's why it got abruptly booted out of last year into this April. I can't claim to know the extent of any of it from more than I've read, but Bong Joon-ho says he has Final Cut and is pretty happy with the whole thing, so that's as good a sign as any. It looks intense, it looks surreal, it looks funny. I imagine there's going to be some sort of commentary on human nature in a satirical way, the kind that Bong does so well. This is shaping up to be something special, I feel. There's a real good energy coming off of this. Also, it's just nice to have Bong back in cinemas. Can't wait for this, can't wait for his next one, and then his next one, so on and so forth.
Number 3.
We now return to maybe the most universally enjoyed film franchise at the moment, maybe? The most popular that isn't like a huge blockbuster or anything, surely. Benoit Blanc is back on another case in the next Knives Out film, Wake Up Dead Man. Love the title choice, love that we're getting another one of these. I know some people were pretty down on Glass Onion, but I had the time of my life with that one. I was very lucky to be able to see that in the cinemas for its brief theatrical window, and seeing that with a full house was just... that was an unforgettable experience for me. And the first Knives Out, one of my all-time favourites. Top 30, easily. The bit that excites me most about this is the thing that probably excites people the most about these films, which is the cast. And this one might just be the best yet. Brolin, Close, O'Connor, Washington, Scott, Spaney, Renner. Jeremy Renner in particular, I am really excited for. He is memed on a lot, which sometimes is fair, but I think he is really talented and one of my favourite actors. I assumed after his accident he just wouldn't be acting again, so it's really good to see him make such a good comeback, and for him to come back in a film like this. Rian Johnson and Netflix now have their trilogy, but honestly, keep going. I may just eat my words, especially if there is a noticeable dip in quality, but I think I'd be very happy if, for the foreseeable future, if every few years one of these films just pops up. We got a little saga of the many cases of Benoit Blanc. In any case, if this delivers, Rian Johnson will have one of the best modern trilogies under his belt. If Disney let him back into Star Wars, we might just get 2. That'll ruffle some feathers.
Number 2.
A few years ago, when the MCU was at its peak, a list like this for me would have been mostly blockbuster films, most of them being superhero films. Now, I'm genuinely surprised there's more than one on this list. But with the Fantastic Four, my excitement for that comes from wanting to see a good version of those characters done under the Marvel banner. Here, my even greater excitement for Superman comes from, similar to the Batman a couple years ago, that everybody involved and all the elements that seem to be pouring into it just seem to suggest a really great film in the making. Like, everyone's really trying with this one. DC have been in their find out era for a while now, and my only concern about that is that the brand may be damaged to a level that could be irreparable, and I'm really hoping that this can turn that around. It's also wild that during the peak era of superhero films that I'm gonna arbitrarily consider 2012 to 2021, that we only got one solo Superman film in that entire time? That's just madness to me. He is the superhero. But with James Gunn heading up the new DCU, it makes sense that he spearheads the first movie, and it makes sense that that movie is Superman. There have been things along the way that have made me raise my eyebrows a bit, like the number of superhero characters in this film that aren't Superman, the Hail Mary that is the sheer number of interconnected projects right out the gate, and Gunn's humour. I don't know if that's going to be a good match for Supes, but with each one of those, I'm gonna put my reservations aside because I have a really good feeling about this one. It feels like everyone involved is having a good time and cares about making something special here. And I just want to be excited for a DC film again. It hasn't happened in a few years. With a fresh start, they've got a real good chance here. I'm really hoping this is like the movie of the summer.
Number 1.
If my limited video lineup gives you any indication of what I like, this should be no surprise. My favourite director, Guillermo del Toro, has a film coming out. And apropos of nothing, I think it's important to just let you know that my favourite book of all time is Frankenstein. Oh, what's that? What's his new film called? Brother, the decision to make this happen feels like it was made just for this man and me. This is just one of the most obviously great film ideas of all time. The kind that so rarely happen, like the marriage of material and creator. But I'm not going to question it for a second. I'm just so happy it is happening. His personal adoration of the material aside, Del Toro's style and talents are just so suited to this. Not just aesthetically, but thematically, emotionally. He's a very emotional creative whose works all speak from the heart. He's got one of the most sincere filmographies out there, and that's something I feel a great Frankenstein adaptation needs. Sincerity. You're gonna feel empathy for that creature, or Guillermo's breaking into your house. I do lament that Andrew Garfield couldn't remain in the role of the creature. He would have crushed that. I haven't seen Jacob Elordi in many things, but I'm curious to see his interpretation. If he can just stay out of trouble. Also, a mate of mine got to be an extra in this. That rules. So yeah, this really can't come soon enough. I don't even know what else is on the release schedule past this year that can get me more hyped than this. This line of thinking is exactly how people get burned. It's exactly how I've been burned in the past, but I really would be stun-locked if this ended up being a misfire in any way. Maybe if Del Toro's too close to the material, but I don't know. Just based on everything he's ever done, it is a perfect match. And I really hope this gets a theatrical release for longer than a week. Netflix are really dropping the ball on that one. So yeah, that's my cinematic Ben 10 of the year. I make these lists every year on Letterboxd if you want to give me a little follow. And not all of them turn out to be great. Some films that make lists like this can be a little stinky. But these ones, I really hope they nail it. It's important to have hope. So, there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate that you did, and I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what films you're looking forward to most in 2025. It's a pretty stacked year. There's a lot to choose from. Thanks again. Like and subscribe if you feel like it. And I'll see you around.